Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 352 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. We had a big fight weekend that just passed, both in boxing and the UFC. And, of course, we're going to talk about both of them. But what I want to start with is it's always funny to me. And it's always interesting to see how conversations about certain fighters and conversations about certain athletes change after a loss. You see, everyone is for somebody until they show weakness or until they show a, I guess, lack of a better term, chink in the armor. Once you show chink in the armor, that's when you start to see and hear a lot of narratives about somebody, a lot of narratives about just how someone feels about somebody moving forward. Let me first start by congratulating Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, he beat Errol Spence Jr. to become the undisputed welterweight champion. He has, I think, 4 belts now. Let's first stay on the positive. The sport of boxing is interesting, and it has some very interesting, let's say, ways to promote itself. It has interesting ways that it goes about business, and some of those ways, of course, benefit boxing. When you talk about the belts, when you talk about the weigh-ins, when you talk about the weight classes, that boxing as a organization, as an entity, as a sport is definitely run in a way that helps promote the product. Boxing, obviously, how it's different from football, basketball is you in that ring, and boxing is not. It's not like the NFL. There's not a shield. You're going to see an athlete. You're going to see somebody fight. The boxing's popularity is solely based on his fighters, on his boxers. So in that aspect, I do understand. I do love how they promote themselves. With the Showtime All Access and like I said, the multiple weigh-ins and just some of the eccentric fighters that they have. It's great. But one hindrance that boxing has is it's such a how do I explain this, man? It's such the way that it's run holds itself back at times, especially when we talk about, contracts and when fighters fight each other and if fighters ever fight each other. It's such a hindrance to itself sometimes how these fights and situations happen. Why am I saying this now? Because a lot of people have questioned Terence Crawford going into this fight. As while yes, he was 39-0 going into this fight, the validity of the people that he fought and when he fought them kind of gave people pause. And it kind of made people think, while yes, he's great and he's 39-0, who has he fought? When has he fought? And now, mind you, and we'll talk about this a little bit with UFC, but you don't play box, right? Everyone that is professional boxer, of course, there's levels, right? But you don't play box. You don't, because as we saw again for the UFC, one hit can drastically affect not just the fight, but your entire life. And one false move can get you beat in any fighting sport. And a lot of people were questioning just how valid that 39-0 was. So when we heard of rumblings that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, who at the time, Errol Spence was considered one of the best pound for pound fighters in boxing, a lot of people questioned if it was going to happen, because we've heard this before. We've heard mega fights, because this would be considered a mega fight. We've heard mega fights before. It just never really came to fruition, or it came to fruition a little too late, and neither boxer was in their prime, i.e. Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. Well, yes, we did get that fight. Again, both boxers were not even close to their prime, and while yes, Floyd did win, you do question how that fight would have went if both fighters were in their prime. So when we heard rumblings of Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, nobody really thought it was going to happen, right? Because that's just how boxing is. You hear about these mega fights. You hear about, Devin Haney and Shakur Stevens, but it just never really comes to fruition. Well, this Terence Crawford fight, once they got official dates, contracts were signed, boom. That's when the excitement started happening, and people started putting the mega fight title on this. And don't get me wrong, you have arguably two of the best fighters in the world going up against each other. And it didn't disappoint. Terence Crawford beat the hell out of Errol Spence. I think it was from round 2 on. It was just total domination. Now, he ultimately won in 9 rounds of TKO. It was stoppage. I know Errol Spence and his crew kind of contested and was upset about the stoppage, but if you watch the fight, it was he was just running into punches. And Terence Crawford. See, here's the thing about Terence Crawford, man. His defense ability, his counter ability. He was never really known as the hardest hitting, but even though he does have a lot of knockouts, a lot of his knockouts come from counters. You get a small opening, or you allow a small opening to Terence Crawford, you're more than likely to get knocked out. That's just the type of athlete he was. And while I say it was complete domination, it was still a good fight, and I do believe that it lived up to the hype that came with it. And this is why I started the episode. I started the episode with, it's interesting how narratives change, and it's interesting how, the way that you explain and the way that you talk about somebody changes after their armor is dinked. Errol Spence has gone through a lot when we talk about car accidents and certain situations. It is shocking that not only is he still alive, he's still competing at a high level in boxing. Because if you look at the car accident video and you look at some of the things that he grew up and had to deal with, even in his boxing career, that would have taken a lot of people out. So it is shocking that he's still fighting at a high level and still considered one of the best fighters in the world. And going into this fight, majority of the people, they did a little survey or whatever. Majority of the people that were tuning into this fight had Spence beating Crawford. Again, it goes back to a lot of people were questioning Crawford's resume and questioning who he really fought. And Errol Spence is for sure the best fighter that Terence Crawford has fought in his career. I think Terence Crawford even said it. So a lot of people had Errol Spence beating Terence Crawford. The sports bets had Errol Spence beating Terence Crawford. The world, I'm not gonna say the world, but most people were going for Errol Spence. So I think it's interesting that when he lost, and you're hearing people like Stephen A. Smith say, he should consider retirement, or you're hearing people say that Errol Spence, he's not even in the same class as Crawford. Don't get me wrong, bro. Errol Spence got destroyed. Like it wasn't. The only reason why the fight lasted 9 rounds is because just the sheer will and just the sheer endurance that Errol Spence has. I think he may have won the first round. Outside of that, he had maybe the first round. Outside of that, every single round he lost. I mean, he got knocked down twice. He got knocked down once in the second, I believe, and twice in the 7th. And the only reason why he really survived the 7th round knockout is because the second one came at the bell. So it was as much of a dominating performance as you will ever see. And when I mean ever see, I mean ever see as far as a mega fight like this. And Terence Crawford did what he was supposed to do. But I just think I just don't like, and that's just in sports in general, man. I don't like how the conversation switches when someone loses, and I'm not saying, yes, when you lose, you're ultimately the loser of the bout or the loser of the game or whatever. So you're not going to be talked about in the same light as the winner. I get that. People are going to champion Terence Crawford more than they champion Errol Spence right now, and that's rightfully so. But people, you hear it's like people just completely throw. Now you hear people saying now that Errol Spence is trash, or that Errol Spence, you really look at his record and he didn't fight anybody. That's not true. He just beat Ugas, and Ugas is really good. Yes, Errol Spence lost, and he deserved all of that won in the loss column on his record. Which, by the way, that's another thing. This is his first loss of his career. It really, when I watched that fight, it made me think of Floyd Mayweather. And I'm not saying, I know a lot of people are saying, will Terence Crawford be Floyd Mayweather in his prime? I'm not going to go that far. I think people forget how good Floyd Money Mayweather was. And that's no disrespect to Crawford, but when I was watching this fight, I was thinking of Floyd Mayweather. And I was thinking, how would his life be different? How would we view him different? How would he be spoken of differently if he had a 1 in that loss column? Still had the 50 wins, but that 1 loss. How would we view him? How would we speak on him? Because it's not all I'm hearing, but a lot that I'm hearing is Errol Spence is trash now, which is furthest from the truth. Errol Spence is still considered one of the best boxers, or at least should still be considered one of the best boxers in the world. The problem is he ran into a better boxer. Now, another thing that I don't like about boxing is, that's what I was trying to say, the political way that things are going. Now let's talk about the weights, or in the weight class, and how people dictate at what weight they'll be fighting. I understand the importance of weight classes and the importance of, trying to be as close to each other weight-wise as possible, because if you're fighting someone that's just 10 pounds heavier, that's a decisive advantage, because those hits just hurt 10 pounds more, And you're hearing a lot of people say, and you can kind of see it. I'm not saying this is the only reason why Terence Crawford won, but it just looked like Errol Spence was dehydrated. I know there was a dehydration clause and everything, but Errol Spence looked dehydrated. He looked slow from the jump. Now, You know it's bad when you have novices, people that don't watch boxing. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not a boxing like extraordinaire. I'm not a boxing expert. I will watch a fight from time to time, but I'm not. I can consider myself maybe a little higher than a novice. I do know certain boxers, and I do watch boxing and stuff like that sometimes. But the people that are probably watch boxing maybe once a year, or maybe this could have been their first boxing fight that they've watched, could look at that fight and think to themselves, looking at Errol Spence, and I wouldn't be upset if they said, "Yo, why is he in the ring?" They prop this fight up to be one of the best fights in boxing history. And Errol Spence just looked drastically inferior to Terence Crawford. And I think a lot of that is because of the dehydration. When you have to cut 7-8 pounds in a day or 2 days, that is tough. And on top of that, you have to then be at your best and be at the top of your game fighting. That is tough. I'm not taking anything away from Terence Crawford. Not at all. Terence Crawford deserved that win. Terence Crawford did what he was supposed to do. But what I am saying is, it looked like Errol Spence was dehydrated, and you're looking at people like Deontay Wilder, and some of the commentators say Errol Spence looked like his body was dehydrated. I mean, he was walking a lot of the times. He was opening himself up to hits that he usually wouldn't do. And again, I'm not trying to take away from Terence Crawford. You won the fight. And even Errol Spence said the better man won. Terence Crawford is considered and should be considered one of, if not the best fighter in boxing right now. Let's say and. And I do want to give credit to Errol Spence. Roy Jones Jr. was saying something a couple months ago that a lot of people probably, Roy Jones, he be saying some crazy things sometimes, and his approach and his delivery, let me say, is a little off sometimes. But Roy Jones Jr. did say something that I wholeheartedly believe in, that people are so attached to their records in boxing that they are hesitant to fight people that are close to their level, or sometimes could even be better than them because of that record. And like I said, it goes back to the whole Floyd Mayweather thing. How would we view Floyd Mayweather if he still had the 50 wins, but he also had one loss? We'd view him completely different. So I commend Terence Crawford and I commend Errol Spence. I think it's crazy, and I think it's crazy how a lot of people are talking about Errol Spence right now like he didn't just beat you guys, who is a very, very good boxer, and beat him convincingly. The man couldn't even see out his eye. So again, I don't want to take away from what Terence Crawford did. I do want to congratulate him again for becoming the undisputed welterweight champion. And I'm also interested to see what's next for him. Like, who does he fight? Like, I know that Errol Spence, that there is a rematch clause, and Errol Spence said that he plans to do the rematch clause. I also understand that he said that he's trying to do it before the end of the year. Look, I understand the whole preparation process might be a little different, seeing as though you've already fought him, but I just think that's a little too early. And maybe, I know that Errol Spence had to come down in weight to fight. Maybe that Terence Crawford might go up in weight. There are rumblings that saying that he possibly could fight around the 154 mark. I think they fought around 146, 147, which I understand it doesn't sound like a lot, but 7 pounds is a lot when you have to, I'm interested, man. You're saying that we're hearing that, and we even saw in the ring how he was going at Jamel Charlo during the fight, and how that would be a pretty interesting fight. Didn't one of the Charlo's brothers getting smacked in the face? I saw that on video. I saw that on video. Damn, yeah, that was bad too, but. Yeah, man. Shouts out to Terence Crawford for beating Errol Spence. And again, shouts out to both of them because the fight lived up to the hype. The fight lived up to the hype. I understand that it felt like Terence Crawford was dominating, which he was, don't get me wrong, but it was still an entertaining fight. And I'm not taking away from anything that Terence Crawford did. He was the better fighter in that ring by let's say head and shoulders, the best fighter that night. So shouts out to Terence Crawford for beating Errol Spence. We talked about you don't play box, you don't play fight when we're talking about situations like this, because one hit can drastically change the outcome of a fight, and that is what we saw in the UFC. When Justin Gaethje, I'm sorry, had it. Look, let me first congratulate Justin Gaethje for winning the BMF title. Definitely well deserved. This was the rematch between him and Dustin Poirier. I'm sorry, and he ultimately, like I said, won. This is why I was talking about football, right? And I said that I will never. I don't aspire to be a football player. I never inspired to be a football player. I played 1 year, didn't work out. I went to one. My cousin, he is a UFC / boxer. He does mixed martial arts. He pretty much does, and he loves it. Like that's his outlet. My outlet is basketball. My outlet is podcasting. If I'm having a bad day, I'll probably go hoop, or I'd come and podcast and just talk about something that I love, which is sports. My cousin, his outlet is mixed martial arts, UFC, boxing, and I went to one training session with him, and I knew very quickly that this whole UFC thing is not for me. Not for me. Again, you do not play box, play fight, because one hit can change the trajectory of the entire fight. Justin Gaethje, while yes, he did win, but I would say before, now mind you, this is the second fight that him and Poirier had. Poirier won the first one. Dustin Poirier, he won the first one. And it was a pretty even fight. I think it was second round. It was a pretty even fight. Then the man landed the nicest kick to the head I've ever seen. Down goes Dustin. It's over with. And again, it was a kick, bro. It was a kick. And now Justin Gaethje is the BMF champion. And kind of like boxing, UFC, I, it's very hard when we talk about. I talked about this when Gervonta Davis won his fight against Ryan Garcia. It's very hard in both boxing and UFC to crown who the best pound for pound fighter is because of the weight class situation. Because I mean, some weight classes are better than the others. Some fighters obviously are thriving in their weight class, but some weight classes are not as stacked as others. And when we talk about boxing, it's like when you look at the lightweight or the weatherweight division, and then you look at some contracts it's with Showtime, some with HBO, some with DAZN. It just gets complicated, and the same thing happens, like I said, with UFC. I mean, you have the welterweight and Alexander Volkanovski, and you also have John Jones, who's a heavyweight. Islam Makhachev, he's a weatherweight. It's just it's. I'm not saying that you don't take how do I put this into words? I'm not taking away from anything anyone's doing. I'm just saying it's hard to really see who the best pound for pound fighter is. Even though a lot of people, at least for the UFC, would probably go Alexander Volkanovski, whatever his name is, man. I apologize. I'm not good with names, bro. I say this every single time. But I mean, I'm looking at this pound for pound list, right? And you just see a plethora, like I said, Alexander, you have Islam Makhachev, you have John Jones, heavyweight, you have Israel Adesanya, middleweight, you have Leon Edwards, weatherweight, lightweight, Charles Olivier, Sterling, who's a bantamweight. It's just tough. And there's people like Alexander Pereira, he's not in it. Max Holiday's not in it. Demetrius Johnson. I don't know. Let me not go down this road. Let me just stick to what it is. Congratulations to Justin Gaethje for beating Dustin Poirier and becoming the BMF champion. Again, this was the second fight. I'm almost sure that there's going to be a third, seeing as though Dustin won the first one and Justin won the second one. So I'm interested to see who's gonna break that tiebreaker, and I think it would be in the UFC's best interest if there's a third fight. So, especially how this fight ended. So, congratulations to both Terence Crawford and congratulations to Justin Gaethje, both for Crawford being the undisputed welterweight champion and Gaethje for winning the BMF belt. Let's go over to football for a second. And it's been a very rocky offseason for the NFL, for owners in regards to their relationship with players, and especially the running backs and their want of, or their need of, more respect as far as contracts and how things are done. And last episode, of course, I talked ad nauseum about the running back position and about why the running backs are not getting the type of payment that they feel they deserve. And while I do think that they deserve more money, I also understand when you're an owner, when you're a GM and you're handing out money and handing out contracts. I also understand why you would be hesitant to pay a running back big money. That's what I was expressing last episode. Again, I do think that every player deserves to get what they feel they deserve because they're the players are the one that put their body on the line. But this offseason, more than ever, I believe, owners are really and GMs are really showing you how much they do or don't value a player or value a position or value their own players. Like I said, there's been a long-standing fight, but it's been louder than ever this offseason. But there's been a long-standing fight between the how much running backs get paid and what they feel their value is. And Jim Irsay, who is the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, had some very interesting words to say after Jonathan Taylor, who of course is a running back, one of the best running back in the league, shared his dissatisfaction to how the running back position has been treated. I know Jim Irsay came out and pretty much said that, it's unfair or whatever why running backs get paid, and he feels that they should be getting, while they're not as valued as other positions, they should be paid more. That's what Jim Irsay, who, by the way, gives out checks, said. Which then prompted his best running back and one of the league's best running back, Jonathan Taylor, to pretty much come back and say, now, yes, of course, I was paraphrasing what Jim Irsay first said, and I'm paraphrasing what Jonathan Taylor said. And Taylor pretty much said, bro, you say you want respect, or you respect us, and you say this and that, but you low ball, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're not paying us. You're in charge, or you can directly change this, and it's not changing. Which I think they had a meeting. They did have a meeting. Jonathan Taylor and Jim Irsay had a meeting, and very quickly after that meeting, reports came out saying that Jonathan Taylor wanted or requested a trade from the Indianapolis Colts. Again, Jonathan Taylor just a year or two ago was in the MVP talks. Jim Irsay, who, might I add you, isn't the most popular owner. He has had several run-ins and off-the-field situations that don't need to be discussed. He's just not the most popular owner. And he has done things that have, just on the field, giving wild contracts. He is the owner that brought in Jeff Saturday, who had absolutely no coaching experience, to be the head coach of the team. So he was the owner that watched he watched Andrew Luck get pummeled week after week behind that weak offensive line. He franchise tagged Peyton Manning twice. Mind you, Peyton Manning is widely considered as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And while he wasn't in his prime, he wasn't too far removed from it. And he franchise tagged him twice. So Jim Irsay doesn't have the reputation of being the best owner. Let me first say that. But Jim Irsay, after Jonathan Taylor pretty much came out and requested a trade, said we're not trading him. He also said this. Now, I'm not going to paraphrase. This is literally the quote that Jim Irsay said. the literal quote. I'm going to read it. The quote is this: "If I die tonight and Jonathan Taylor is out of the league, no one's going to miss us. The league goes on. We know that. The National Football League rolls on. It doesn't matter who comes and who goes. And it is a privilege to be a part of it." There's ways of saying things, and there's ways of doing things. And how do I broach this? Let me first say I agree to a certain extent what Jim Irsay said. We talk about this a lot, man. The NFL is going to roll on. You see people get major injuries. I mean, I wish for a speedy recovery, but Tim Patrick, the wide receiver for the Broncos, has torn ACL, out for the season. Very unfortunate for him. I wish for a speedy recovery. The league is going to go on. Nyheim Hines had a boat accident, I believe, a speedboat accident, out for the season. The league is going to go on. The Bills are going to go on. It's just that's just how it is. So I agree with Jim Irsay in that sense, as far as it doesn't really matter who's here. I mean, we saw that with the refs. They had replacement refs. A league that is worth billions of dollars had replacement refs, and the product was horrible. But it kept going. You see, there's been seasons where, Tom Brady's been out. He got suspended. Patrick Mahomes has missed games. Like, it doesn't. Joe Burrow missed half a season, half his rookie season. So I do agree with Jim Irsay in saying that it doesn't really matter what one or two people do, or the league is always the fans are gonna come out. The fans want to see the product. It's gonna keep going. But here's the issue that I have with Jim Irsay. And here's the issue that I have with what he said. Again, I agree what he said when he says it doesn't matter who comes and who goes. The league is going to go on. We know that. I agree with that. The National Football League rolls on. I agree with that. But here's the issue that I have. And here's the bigger issue in this Jim Irsay quote. This was the perfect time and the perfect situation for you to unify yourself with a cause. Right now, the running back position is very fragile, especially when we talk about the top athletes and the top running backs wanting to get paid. On top of that, if we just talk about the Colts and Jim Irsay, one of your, if not your best player right now, is very vocal about how he feels and how other players feel. Now, don't get me wrong. I know this. I keep saying a running back thing, but this is a league thing. This is multiple players, multiple positions. They feel that they are not valued. I understand it's being pictured as a running back thing, but this is a league-wide thing outside of quarterbacks. Hell, Zach Martin is out. Zach Martin is holding out for the Cowboys. This is a league-wide thing. Jim Irsay's best player, pretty much, is coming out and saying that, his dissatisfaction to how players are being treated. And instead of being one of the people that not only can change how players are being treated, but being one of the people that could be the voice that is needed. You make that comment. And I think I understand that you can't tell anybody how to spend their money. And especially billionaires. You cannot tell billionaires how to spend their money. I get it. But this shows you, I think owners get something confused sometimes. And shouts out to Marcus Spears. Shouts out to Ryan Clark. They both said this. I think some owners believe that people pay their hard-earned money to come to the games to see them. To come to the games to see their team. And to a certain extent, yes, you do come to see your favorite team. But people are paying their hard-earned money, especially today. People are paying their hard-earned money to see the players. If you don't believe me, look at the attendance rate. Or look at the attendance of the Cincinnati Bengals when Joe Burrow was out or playing to when he's out. Look at the attendance of the Kansas City Chiefs when Patrick Mahomes is playing and when he's not. Look at the attendance of the Buffalo Bills when Josh Allen's in the game and when he's not. What I'm saying is, owners, Jim Irsay has to understand. Yes, the NFL rolls on. But people don't come to see you. They come to see Jonathan Taylor. They come to see the Colts, not you. So the last thing you want to do is talk down and make it seem like your best player doesn't matter. I understand he tried to do the whole, if I die tonight and Jonathan Taylor's out the league, no one's going to miss us. What? Of course no one's going to miss you, Jim Irsay, because no one sees you. But that's not true. If Jonathan Taylor, Jonathan Taylor is one of the best players in the National Football League. There's such a disconnect with that statement. Again, I do understand and I do agree with the one thing that he said. The league goes on. We know that. That is true. But it goes on with the players. I understand this, the shield. The NFL is a shield. I get that. But you're showing how much or how little you value your players when you make a comment like that in the manner of which he made it. And trust me, man, while Jim Irsay his name is on this bullet, he's not the only owner that feels this way. You think that if the owner of the Giants really valued his players, that there would be such a holdout or such a pay discrepancy between Saquon Barkley, his best player, and Daniel Jones? You think that if the owner of the Tennessee Titans loved Derrick Henry that much and valued Derrick Henry that much, he would have made only $40 million his entire career? When you have other players making $40 million a year? I will say that this is the wrong time to make this statement. and make this quote. I don't understand why. I do understand why you make this quote, because you believe this quote. And while, yes, he put Jonathan Taylor's name in it because him and Jonathan Taylor had a conversation before, it's not just a Jonathan Taylor thing. This is what Jim Irsay, he doesn't value his players, the ones that put their lives on the line for a product. And he's not the only, and when you hear quotes like that, as small as that quote is, it speaks volumes. And that's why you look up today, and outside the quarterback position, pretty much every other position is fighting for equal value. So, yeah. Let's talk about some baseball. Right. This is the MLB Trade Deadline, and when we look at sports and when we look at a team, right? Let's look at basketball for a second. What is the reason for the trade deadline? Teams look at their team, owners and GMs look at their teams, and they look at how competitive their team is, right? And they look at not only how competitive their team is, but how competitive their team should be, and are they meeting up to that standard? Some teams are obviously going to be more competitive than the others. Some teams should be more competitive than others. They're just not. When we talk about baseball, first of all, shouts out to the Baltimore Orioles being one of the best teams in baseball. I think the second best team in the... Actually, I'm sorry. The best team. The best team in the AL. 65-41. Who would have thought that? Remember, there was a time when the Baltimore Orioles were losing 100+ games a year. And now they are atop of the AL. Tampa Bay is pretty good too. But you look at teams like the Baltimore Orioles, and they look at this trade deadline, and they are ecstatic. They are way higher than they projected. The trade deadline out, and also All-Star Weekend, but mostly the trade deadline is for you to really evaluate your team and understand, what do we need to get? Do we need to get better? What do we need to do to get better? Or are we okay with where we are? I would say that the Orioles are okay with where they are. The Tampa Bay Rays are okay with where they are. The Rangers are okay with it, even though they did just get Matt Scherzer. It's also for teams that look at themselves and look at their records and think, we should be better than what we are. Like the Yankees. The Yankees are 55-51 right now. With how much their roster cost, and having Aaron Judge, even though he was injured most of the year, having Giancarlo Stanton, even though he was injured most of the year, you would expect the Yankees to be higher. Same as, let's say, the Los Angeles Angels. You have Shohei Ohtani, I'm sorry. You also have Mike Trout, even though Mike Trout's been injured as well, but you're 56-51. You look at some teams are going to look at themselves. The Cleveland Guardians, 1 game under 500. The Detroit Tigers are 12 games under 500. The White Sox are 21 games under 500. So, teams look at their status and think we should be better. And it's not just for the AL, it's the NL as well. The Braves, obviously the best team in baseball right now. But even though the Phillies are 8 games above 500, you would expect them to be a little better. The most expensive team in baseball right now is the New York Mets, and they are 5 games below 500. The Padres, another very expensive team. You have Fernando Tatis. You have Manny Machado. You have Juan Soto. You're 3 games below 500. So for teams like that, the trade deadline is very important because you're trying to hit that reset in the middle of the season, and not reset as far as like complete blow up, but you need to see how do we get as close to expectations as possible. A lot of people, when you get Matt Scherzer and when you get Justin Verlander and you have Pete Alonso, they expect the Mets to be contending for a World Series. They may not even make the playoffs. When you have, like I said, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, when you have Manny Machado, you expect the Padres to be competing for a champion or a World Series. They may not even make the playoffs. And let's focus a little bit on the Mets. The Mets is one of those teams that looks to be very active for the trade deadline because, like I said, they are not meeting their expectation. Again, like I said, they just traded Matt Scherzer to the Rangers, I believe. I talked about this last year or last season when they ultimately lost. They had like the best record in baseball and lost in like the first round. Or the wild card, I think. And I said that's probably one of the worst losses or one of the most epic failures in baseball history to have the record that they have. And I don't even think they made it out the wild card. This is a new day and age in baseball. The saying in baseball has always been that you can buy a championship. I mean, when you look, that's one of the biggest reasons why the Yankees were so successful, because they were just buying the best players. I mean, they had the Yes Network was made for the Yankees, and they were just buying the best players. I mean, you saw what they gave Giancarlo Stanton. They had Derek Jeter. They had Alex Rodriguez. They had some of the best players. CC Sabathia. Like, they were able to buy the best players. That's always been the saying. The team that had one of the highest payrolls more than likely will have something to say about who wins the World Series. That's what it's always been. But as we're seeing, some of the most expensive rosters, the San Diego Padres, the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, some of the most expensive rosters aren't even close to competing for a World Series. And even if they make the playoffs, like the Yankees probably will make the playoffs, or maybe the wild card. No one thinks that the Yankees are going to win. But then you look at some of the smaller market teams, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Baltimore Orioles, the Texas Rangers, the Atlanta Braves, the Cincinnati Reds. Those now, yes, of course, the Dodgers is also a big market, and they are the Dodgers. But what I'm just saying is, this is a new day. This is a new age in baseball. It doesn't matter how much you pay at this point. And if you don't believe me, look at the Mets. the highest payroll in baseball. I think maybe in baseball history. I could be wrong about that, but I know for sure in baseball. And I think they just traded Justin Verlander to the Astros. It's yeah, as we speak, because I'm recording this on a Friday or on a Tuesday. The Astros just acquired Justin Verlander. Means that their two biggest pitching acquisitions the last 2 years, Max Scherzer, and Justin Verlander just got traded. And the team, like I said, is 50-55 right now. Again, the saying used to always be, if you pay the most money, you're going to win a World Series. I think probably because the talent level is, and the talent gap is not that far anymore, that's just not the case. Because if that was the case, a team like the Astros or a team like the Mets would be way better than they are. A team like the Padres would be way better than they are. So, and there you have it, man. That's been today's episode. Actually, no. I forgot. Let's talk about Team USA for a second. And how Team USA soccer has just got people in a bind. I will say this, man. Team USA usually dominates in 4 sports. When we talk about FIBA, when we talk about the Olympics, they usually dominate in 4 sports: basketball, swimming, gymnastics, and soccer. Women's soccer or soccer. Men's soccer, for sure, no. But when we talk about World Cup, when we talk about FIBA, women's soccer has, USA women's soccer usually dominates. This is the first time where you look, and while yes, Team USA did advance out the round, but this is the first time I think they were second in their group. They were second. I think this is also the first time they failed to score in their last game to get out the group. And when you look, people are scared, man. Again, USA dominates in 4 areas, and one of them is soccer, women's soccer. And yes, Megan Rapinoe doesn't look as great. I don't even think she played one of those games. Doesn't look as great. Alex Morgan hasn't looked all that great. I know it's a very young team, but this Team USA is having people in a pickle, man. Like, they are nervous. And I think they're also nervous because you look, and it's very easy to see that Team USA does not look like the best team. There's a look thing. I understand that you advanced out of your group, but Team USA usually looks like, all right, as Team USA, they're the best team. Team USA looks absolutely nothing like the best team. At this point, I wouldn't be shocked if they won because it's Team USA, and I know the history that they have, and they're going for a three-peat. But I also wouldn't be shocked if they lost because they don't look like the Team USA that we know. Carly Lloyd was kind of heated because they were celebrating advance, and she was just like, I mean, y'all advanced but couldn't score. And if it wasn't for Portugal, it wasn't for a Portugal player hitting the freaking crossbar or hitting the bar, they would have lost. I get a win is a win. I know, hey, a win is a win. I get that. But Team USA, at least the women's, has looked absolutely nothing like not only what we remember them to look like, but what we hoped they look like, especially when they're trying to win, 3 straight. They look bad, bro. I'll keep it a bean with you. They don't look good. They just look average. Now, it also does suck that their games are like 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, what are we doing? I get the whole time zone thing, so I'm not going to be that person. But it's just like people are upset of how they looked. And I get it, you know. And you've been dominating for something for so long, and now you look pedestrian at best. It's just like, again, I wouldn't be shocked, and this is where I'll end it. I wouldn't be shocked if Team USA wins because it's Team USA, and I know the history that Team USA women's soccer holds. But I also wouldn't be shocked if they lost because, as we see here today, they for sure don't look like the best team. They could turn it on. It could be one of those flip the switch things, but with how young that this team is and how experienced the other teams are, I don't think this is one of those flip the switch moments. Especially because if you were going to flip the switch, you would have done that against Portugal, who you historically are very much better than. And you win technically in a draw. So we'll see. But there you have it. That now has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so anything would help. Please subscribe. Also, subscribe to the socials. Subscribe to Instagram. Subscribe to or follow the Instagram. Follow the Twitter, or not Twitter, TikTok. Why do I keep saying Twitter? It's not even Twitter anymore. The TikTok. I post things pretty much daily, so you'll get constant content. And if you comment and you see that the Unpopular Podcast responds, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, that's me. I'm responding. Please be respectful, and we'll have a conversation. I understand that all of my viewpoints aren't widely viewed the same. So yeah, leave how you feel. We'll talk about it. You know, I have no problem having a conversation. Just be respectful, man. But yeah, I do definitely appreciate you guys. And until next time, much love.